Good morning, everybody, or good afternoon, or good evening, as it may happen to be. I wanted to I wanted to go over what you could say is our traditional enemies' advice to their soldiers, and I wanted to make it a clear presentation that everybody can use for reference, especially those of you who are also training troops or in military training command, because it's always good to know what um, our enemies and the other side is taking away from the wars they're fighting. And this is a report that was worked out by the Russian command and handed to their soldiers, the new soldiers, and the soldiers already at the front line in Ukraine today. I was in Ukraine until a month ago, and one of my friends in the Ukraine International Brigade told me that the Russians were now giving some of their learning. They are learning things, and for those of you who don't know me, I'm a military historian, and I wrote a lot on the Second World War. And when I was active in the army, I did lectures on the Cold War Russian army tactics. And as for those of you who know me, I do military historical documentaries on the First and Second World War. And that's why I wanted to go over these. There's 66 pieces of advice. Um, One of my friends sent me this from Ukraine after he told me about it. And I also found out you could find it online. And I am posting it on my Patreon on Lost Battlefields on the website, so you guys can download it. I'll be happy to send it. I'll post it out if you can't find it. Um, it is translated, and it is directly translated. And I will try to not read it with a Russian accent just for the entertainment value. Um, I will read one. I don't know. We're live because my initial thought was, oh, I'm going to do this in a nice video and do graphs and photos. But honestly, 66 pieces of detailed wartime advice, it would be a very long video, and it would take me even longer to actually find graphics too. There are practically no graphics in the report itself. There's a few schematics, drawings of trench setups, but that I will try to bring up while we're here. I will keep an eye on the comments, but I figure we'll do one piece of advice. If I have a historical reference to each piece of advice they're giving, I will of course share that. If any of you have one in the chat, you have to think fast, because if you have anything to it, throw it out there. Otherwise, I'll go through all 66 pieces. I have no idea how long time it takes. I will read them as they are given to the Russian soldiers, directly translated, and we'll comment on them. And then at the very end, then we can have a little chat if anybody has specific questions or anything. Thank you so much. Anything specific? By the way, I'm sorry about the sporadic noise. They are building a nuclear bunker outside my house, or it's a missile silo. I'm not entirely sure, but these things happen. Anyway, also, yes, I do. I have a degree in military history and one in psychology. But thank you for asking. Anyway, this is really very much not about me. This is about what they are. Okay, at some point in time, they're going to stop. They said they were going to stop doing the construction at 4 o'clock, which is why I said we're starting at 4 o'clock at this time. So now I'm not going to look. I'm going to try to keep an eye on the comments, but basically I'm going to go over the report so you can get the information that is of use. The report is called, or again, everything is directly translated. I have not embellished on any of this. I have not done anything to it. I live, I fight, I win. Rules of life in war. It was compiled by the 3 Russians, Rasmanov, Khrushchev, and Kuznetsov. And it starts with basic introduction. They will eventually be done with that. Otherwise, bullets will fly out the window, I promise. It is intended for servicemen of the Russian armed forces that are participating in their special military operation in Ukraine. It's for conscripts, cadets of military educational institutions, employees, and various law enforcement agendas, which is somewhat interesting. It is compiled by the back of what they have, what they say. This is what they say. I will try to separate if I give you my opinion or I am quoting straight from the report. Just so there's a difference. I don't want there to be any difference. They're compiling this from the base on veterans that have fought in Afghanistan and the Caucasus and in Ukraine. There's no specifics about features of fighting in the city, sea, or in space. Too bad. I'm really looking forward to the space report. That will be taught by the commanders and senior comrades, as it says. This is a summarized of experiences in life of war collected by the main thing to help survive and win. And it starts by saying, important, got to the agenda, what to bring to recruitment stations, what to bring to the recruiting station. Do not panic, do not believe in rumors or fools who claim that. Everything from helmet, body armor must be purchased, and finally, do not burden your family with expenses and unnecessary expenses. You will receive everything you need from the places that you stay, and it's better to come to the collection point in tracksuit, sneakers, and sports shoes, with passport, military ID, driver's license, and so on. Not much different than you see in any Western military. So, of course, this is specifically pointed towards Russian soldiers, but from what I have seen and hear from Ukraine, many of these things may be very relevant to the Western world, and that's me talking now, to Western militaries, because if we ever get in, whatever we get into next, a lot of the learnings from Ukraine will be brought to every other battlefield. The drone wars, for one, will be something you really, as a soldier in any front line in the next foreseeable future, will have to deal with, really have to deal with. So there's a lot of testing, weapons testings, new concepts going on in Ukraine on all sides. So this is something we can possibly most definitely should learn something from. And this is very interesting. So back to the report. Point number 1. What is a special military operation? The politicians called the actions of our army in Ukraine a special military operation from the point of view of international law. This is true. And for its participants, this is real war with blood, pain, bitterness of loss, and joy of victory. I don't think we need to comment on that. Point number 2. Very interesting, if those of you who know a little bit about military history, Great Patriotic War 2.0. The Great Patriotic War is what the Russians refer to the Second World War as. That's interesting. That is a very interesting signal to us. What they say on this, just look at the list of countries that have declared us sanctions and are helping the Ukrainian regime. Germany, Poland, Czech Republic, Croatia, Norway, Denmark, Japan, Italy. They all fought against us. Today in Ukraine, they're taking revenge on Russia for our great victory. So for us, this is continuation of the Great Patriotic War, and we, like our grandfathers in 45, are obliged to win. Okay. And we, like our grandfathers in 45, are obliged to win. That's a little troubling from a Western point of view, because World War II and what's happening in Ukraine at this point is not exactly the same. So if the Russians are, this is what the Russians are telling their soldiers. Like I said, this report is straight to the Russian soldiers, to the Russian people. Dear God. Not deal. This is the explanation they're giving, that this is much bigger than Ukraine. This is the, if so, this could very well, from their point of view, with that mentality, lead to a world war. From this point of view, if this is the belief that they're actually imprinting on their soldiers, then it's them against everybody, and that's very scary. Okay, point number 3. In Ukraine, we protect Russia. There is no Ukraine as a state. There is the territory of the former Ukrainian SSR temporarily occupied by a terrorist gang. All powers there are concentrated in the hands of citizens of Israel, the USA, Great Britain, who organized the genocide of the natives, reducing 20 million people during the years of independence to survive. People like Negroes in the United States once worked for pennies on European plantations. The brothels of Europe are filled with young Ukrainian women. Men are forced to fight against Russia. The United States and Europe want to wage this war to the last Ukrainian. They don't need people, they need territory and resources. They prepare the same future for us. Therefore, fighting in Ukraine, we are defending Russia and saving residents of Ukraine from the genocide unleashed by the Ukrainian Western politicians. I just want to point out personally, this is not me endorsing anything. I am just telling you what the Russians are telling their soldiers. And this is really telling. Because if this is interesting. Because you have to remember, this is the indoctrination Russian soldiers are getting. So this is the mindset they have when they go to war in Ukraine, is to defend their country from the perceived slavery of past. This is very interesting. 4. Who are Ukrainians? Most recently, 96.7% of Ukrainians were Russians. But for 30 years of independence, they were deprived of their normal education, culture, native language, and turned into wild Russophobes. They still have something left of the Russian. They, like us, were brought up on the exploits of their grandfathers who defeated fascism. They are the same brave fighters, staunch on the defensive, daring on the offensive. Someday, after denazification, they will become Russian again. But for now, they are enemies, cruel and insidious. That means they must be beaten until they lift their hands up without relaxing, until our very victory. Okay, some of this is indoctrination to their troops. Promise to tell you what they're saying. It's not really a whole lot of, you can complain about that in the chat. I'm just going to let you go on, run rapid on that one. I'm just going to tell you what they're saying. We will eventually actually get to battlefield advice. Features of strategy of the Ukrainian army. The West have been preparing Ukraine for war with Russia for 30 years. Realizing we cannot be defeated in a fair fight, they chose the meanest strategy. Following the example of the Nazis, they organized the focal defensive system in settlements. There they deployed battalions or company tactical groups reinforced with artillery, sabotage units, and modern reconnaissance equipment. The strongholds are equipped with cable internet, which allows online surveillance, transmission of commands, and inflicting fire damage. In addition to Soviet weapons, Ukrainian units are equipped with NATO ATGMs, rockets, artillery systems. Each platoon have quadcopters, thermal imaging, and protected means. Probably not for the past 30 years, but okay, I'll just let that stand there. Ukrainian tactics, hit and run. When Russian troops are detected, it is enough for the Ukrainian military to poke a finger at the screen on a tablet so that the coordinates on the target entered the unified battle management network, and the free artillery unit receives a command to open fire. Artillery located in shelters, workshops of factories, basements of shopping centers, etc., advanced to previous prepared positions, strike and hide in their shelters. Mobile sabotage groups complete the defeat of the enemy, which after a short fire contact returns to their strongholds, hiding behind civilians. It is an interesting perception that they have there. Now I'm talking. Because, well, that's very demoralizing if you're told as a Russian soldier that their enemy can pretty much target them at will anywhere. Of course, that would probably to some degree be truer if they had enough artillery munitions, but anyway. Point number 7, combat losses and not so. The nature, I swear to, we'll stop that at some point. It is what it is. The nature of the fighting in Ukraine is different from Afghanistan and Chechnya. In terms of the saturation of both parties with heavy weapons, they are closer to the Second World War. This is evident by the loss statistics. Among the dead, up to 78% have gunshots and shrapnel injuries, 12% have bullet wounds, 10% mine and explosives wounds. And now the important thing, in war, up to 40% are non-combatant losses. Causes: violation of security measures when dealing with weapons, defeats from friendly fire due to the lack of interaction with neighbors, transport accidents, hazards, illness, poisoning with alcohol surrogates. The Americans were unable to change the statistics of the course of the non-combatant losses, but they almost doubled their number to 23%, obliging military personnel in the combat zones to constantly wear a helmet and body armor. Conclusion: helmet and body armor doubles the chance to survive. Conclusion 2: discipline and safety measures help to not get into the statistics of non-combat losses. That's interesting. Let's break that down for a quick minute. 40% are non-combat losses. That's a staggering statistic. It's interesting. The Russians have a 40% non-combat losses. I spent a little time in the military here and there, and I don't think we lost that many people on the way to the mess or even driving. I mean, okay, in the peacetime or our military, most of the injuries and deaths we have are from driving, simply traffic accidents. But 40% non-combat losses, and 78% of gunshot and shrapnel injuries. I wonder what the others died from. We'll get to that, I'm sure. That's a very interesting takeaway from this. Where we lose, this is point number 8, where we lose and how not to become a loss. The success of the enemy is most often the result of our mistakes. We suffer the main damage from artillery fire, on the march, in places of concentration, when setting tasks, when organizing a field camp or stronghold, as well as the actions of sabotage groups. In order not to replenish the statistics of losses, you should follow the simple rules. 8 sub rule 1. On the march or at a halt, keep a distance between cars of at least 20 to 30 meters. That's not necessarily bad advice. This reduces mass casualties from precision weapons by 90%. Any boss who places the equipment closer than 20 meters from another is a fool and a pest. Point 2. Dig in even in places where units are temporarily located. If you're stopped, dig in. A small trench is a good cover from shrapnel and shock waves. 3. Be constantly on the lookout. Wherever you are, on the front line or in the deep rear, monitor the sky and the surrounding area. Organize yourself. The crew of each vehicle squad must become an independent tactical unit, providing protection, camouflage, maintenance of military equipment, engineering equipment of positions, meals, and the rest for soldiers. Basically, you are your unit closest and you take care of your own and yourselves. Not a bad point. We think for 3. Point number 9. Minimizing losses allows the creation of autonomous combat groups within the unit. The combat trio form the basis of friendly relations is the best order of self-organizing of servicemen. It is formed in the squad around the collective weapons of the unit, a machine gun, grenade launcher, etc., making up their calculations. Such a distribution increases the effectiveness of heavy weapons and leads to the reduction of losses. If one of the fighters is wounded, the other 2 are able to quickly evacuate him and provide first aid. The engineering equipment of a firing position for 3 takes half as much time as digging an individual trench. At the same time, while 2 people work with shovels, the third one can observe, provide camouflage of an object, cook food, clean weapons, etc. At night, 2 are alternately awake and watching, 1 is resting. Okay. Fair enough. Just checking to see if anybody have anything really. Machine, since you're here, if there's anything I really need to respond to, just watch at me. Then I'll check that if there's anything. Otherwise, I'm just going to focus on this because there's a lot to read. Point 2, memo to the commander. Commander, remember, your task is to manage the battle. By the way, the relations within the unit. And to become a good commander, you need to kill the militant in yourself and feed the decider. To begin with, throw out the ammunition from the satchel. Leave 2 magazines for AKs and a couple of E-forks. So translation is not. This is enough to stand up for yourself and deprive the temptation to wet enemies personally. Again, it's not being translated. What a commander really needs is to have a set of spare batteries for the radio station, good binoculars, a GPS navigator, a laser rangefinder, thermal imaging monocular, and charges for them. The Ministry of Defense does not provide these gadgets, so the commander purchased them on his own. It is time to get used to the fact that the commander, like any professional, must have personal working tools. Provide your fighters with everything necessary, organize guards, equip positions, train subordinates in the use of all types of weapons. Then the commander in battle will not have to personally sit in the gunner's seat or mechanics. Don't let anyone ignore you. Take away the machine gun from the soldier who sent you in response to a fair demand for service. Let him fight with a shovel until he grows wiser. The chief who thwarts the delivery of food, ammunition, fuel to the unit was using all available means, from complaints to the higher command and statements to the military prosecutor's office, to hazing. He is a traitor and an enemy. With its inaction, it destroys you and the soldiers entrusted to you. Firmly demand clarification of the mission. Provide communication and artillery support. Any refusal are ignoring you as a person and as a commander. And if you are dynamized by the bosses, translation, then the fighters will also ignore you. So if you are ignored by the bosses, the fighters will also ignore you. Don't stoop to the level of tempila. Tempila? A slang term for weakening of, one of those things. You get it. Someone who takes an insult or beating without retaliation. Be a leader. Only in this way will you bring order to the unit and save your fighters. Interesting advice. Probably not in the U.S. Army Commander's Handbook, but it's interesting advice. A little bit more hardcore there. 11, Soldier's Truth. In Afghanistan, the fighters of the Quds Reconnaissance Battalion had a tradition. On operation, they did not start eating until the commander took the spoon. True, this does not apply to everyone, but only to those commanders who, with their professionalism, ensure the fulfillment of combat missions and the preservation of subordinates. A good commander is the master of his craft. He constantly teaches his fighters how to use weapons in its positions, trenches, or of a full profile. Observers are always at their posts. Rest and food for the personnel are organized according to allowance. He does not drink alcohol himself and does not allow relaxation among his subordinates. Calm in battle, controls the fire of the unit, but if necessary, skillfully fires from any type of weapons. Keep steady with superiors, is not afraid to stand up to subordinates, is not lazy to fill out the award lists for those who stand out. Such a commander must be protected in battle, assisted in his service, to speak honestly with him about problems, to put buzzards and loafers in their place, to drive out cowards. If the commander relaxes bitterly, does not dwell on the problems of providing and living for the personnel, does not engage in combat training, cannot organize service, and the personnel is left to itself and wanders around the district in search of adventure, then this is a bad commander. It is necessary to leave him as soon as possible, because he and his unit are doomed to unjustified losses. I thought we just said on the previous statement, this is me talking, that the commander should not engage in battle. And apparently not supposed to drink. That's not a bad choice. It's also very interesting that particular unit, they wouldn't eat until the commander started. In most Western militaries, as many of you know, the higher ranking you are, the lower rankings eat first. They get in line first, and the higher ranking you are, the further back in the food line you go. Men always comes first. But anyway, It's an interesting insight in how the Russians are doing things different than we are. Um, 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 so there. Sorry about that. Number 12. Rules of survival number 1. Don't stand out. The fighting Ukraine have become a benefit of drones of all kinds of reconnaissance devices. The location of the unit is calculated from the movement of military personnel, smoke and reflections of lines, heaps of debris and positions, everything that looks unnatural and stands out on the ground. According to the same principles, snipers and gunners of heavy weapons choose the target. To avoid becoming, sorry, this is interestingly translated, it's a little rough sometimes. To avoid becoming their target, the main principle of disguise must be observed, not to stand out. You should not show off and stand out in uniform among your colleagues. New or sophisticated equipment will definitely attract the attention of the enemy, who will take you for a commander, tough commando. Therefore, before putting on new uniforms, it must be thoroughly washed several times with a brush. After that, it will acquire a softness that is pleasant to the body and the color that blurs the contours of the figure in any terrain. Another unmasking sign is your shadow. It is better to walk and move along the shady side of the street so that your silhouette and cast shadows do not contrast with the general background in the forest or plantings. You need to move at a distance from the edge behind the second, third row of trees. That's actually that's not really bad advice, honestly. That's pretty straightforward infantry advice. Do not hang around. Um, Number 13. The main unmasking sign of the front line is movement. A soldier sitting in a covered trench or trench like a foxhole and even lying motionless in a firing position is not visible to the enemy. He becomes a target as soon as he begins to rummage around the position. If you have to move to the front, then do not wave your arms. Keep your elbows and hands and weapons close to the body, says Hull. This helps to hide the contours of the fighter and further the active movement of cars and people in uniform to trace the location of headquarters, warehouses, canteen, places accumulation of personnel, and becomes a priority target for enemy artillery. Try to avoid such places near the front and unnecessarily try not to fidget. Okay, that's fair enough. That is true. I know there's quite a few places that have been this is me speaking, been under surveillance, and you see large numbers of people entering and leaving from a building, cars around. You always know this is where everybody is. It's again fairly solid advice. Point number 14. Bored. Wait, it's coming. That's what it says. Don't bunch up. The desire of people in the moments of danger to stay in groups makes you a group target. The movement of even a small group in a column, one at a time, with an interval of 4 to 6 steps, arouses the interest of the reconnaissance drone operator, and it is guaranteed to end with an artillery arrival. Afghan Mujahideen, in order to avoid such defeats, moved in pairs with the interval of up to 100 to 150 meters. Groups of 2 people are as conspicuous as a squad or a platoon and does not represent a great interest as a target for artillery. Don't bunch up. Not a bad advice. And again, you're looking at the drones. Drone warfare will be a real problem in the future. Different video on that. 15. We do not need such a movie. Okay. In addition to unmanned and radar reconnaissance equipment, our enemy is actively using video surveillance equipment, from cameras on the road to smartphones at school children. Okay. This movie in real time delivers intelligent information to the firing position of the enemy. In order not to become a movie hero in somebody else's sight, it is necessary to constantly monitor the area around your location. First, check the places where there may be observers or security cameras. As a rule, these are these are hills dominating the area, factory chimneys, buildings that offer a view of your location, poles at intersections or road sections with a maximum visibility, power transmission towers, detected observers or suspicious ambushes are immediately destroyed by all the available means of destruction. CCTV cameras is enough to de-energize by interrupting the electric wires, cut the cables to any cameras you see. Is basically what this says. They put Russian words in here, even when translated. As for Shokotla, slang for a snoop or nosy person, literally a school child. Here it refers to civilians recording Russian troops with smartphones for starters. You can ask for a camera to watch and accidentally drop it on the asphalt. After 5-6 such views of the shooting stop. It's not necessarily perfectly translated, but I think you get the gist. And you see a lot of private footage or video footage of people who have been filming Russians coming and going, so the other way around, that gives away positions and gives away. I saw last the Russian soldiers have started confiscating their cell phones from all their soldiers because everybody's busy filming and posting, and well, that's a very real thing. Anyway, 16. If the locals are greyhounds, all protest actions, sabotage, espionage, and sabotage by local population in the liberated territories are carried out from the command centers of the armed forces of Ukraine and the SBU. This means that in accordance to the first edition protocol to the Geneva Convention of 1978, Article 45, protesters can be considered combatants who do not distinguish themselves with uniform, insignia, etc. The above article does not say this. Okay, this is a translator's translation edition. The above article does not say this. Civilian participation in armed conflicts are by law to be treated as prisoners of war, which is correct. And also, what this does, this opens up to basically shooting protesters, which is, and you cannot say it, but by deeming all protests as insurgents, you are now giving your soldiers permission to shoot them. This is a terrible, terrible thing to say, or to tell your soldiers. Also, the article doesn't say this. I continue. This allows you, back to the report, this allows you to detain local citizens, residents, hinder for the fulfillment of their official duties by our servicemen, and treat them as prisoners of war. And in case where the locals poses a threat to the life and health of our fighters, open fire on them. Again, it quotes Article 46 of the same first additional protocol to the Fourth Geneva Convention, allows us to consider all local persons who take photos and videos of our positions as potential spies. And this, in the conditions of hostilities, deprives them of even the right to be considered prisoners of war with all the ensuing consequences. But shooting at the unarmed is not our method. There are dozens of ways to indicate your status quo. Protesters and those who are filming our objectives, for example, you can detain them like prisoners of war, carry out investigative activities with them, send them to the disposal of the competent authorities. The main thing is to act quickly, decisively, and with the ingenuity, charismatic of our people. This is a bit of a problematic instruction to Russian soldiers, because if you ipso facto give them the directive that all protesters or people with a phone or a camera is now by default working for the enemy, you are laying the groundwork for a whole lot of killed civilians who may just be protesting, which is happening a lot in the areas of Ukraine that's occupied by Russian soldiers. That's scary. I don't think in a Western army could take that much away from this because, well, we tend to not shoot civilians in that way. I will at the very end of this, if anybody want to hear the things I've heard, that's not important right now. This is not my opinion. Point 17. An idiot with a cell phone is his own enemy. Any turning on of a mobile phone in a war zone leads to the detection of the subscriber with the establishment of a geolocation and subsequent artillery strike by location. The fact is that when used in a smartphone, not a SIM card, it automatically connects to the nearby tower, and the Ukrainian cellular operator, seeing your Russian number, finds it, determines its location, and an accuracy of 3 meters. Moreover, when detecting your phone number, the Ukrainian mobile operator just needs to enter it into the NT locator application and start the search, after which not only the current geolocation and movement data becomes available, but also information about the subscriber himself, including the last name, home address. Therefore, do not be surprised if, after a phone call from the front line, your position is shelled and your relatives are called with threats, insults, and extortion of money. That's actually correct. You really cannot have your cell phone on anywhere around, well, anything in Ukraine at this point. When I was there, I had my phone in the smart pocket, unless I was in the cities and I needed it. Good advice, and that's something we will absolutely also need to in Western armies to adhere to, listen to, and assimilate, because cell phones really are giving away everything. And the more advanced they get, the technology you'll get to the point where people can listen to you through them without you knowing. Anyway, back to the report. 18. Photos in social networks are a godsend for a spy. The location of your smartphone can also be determined by geotags, data in social networks for sharing photos and video. If a user specifies a location when publishing photo and video content, then any other user automatically gets access not only to the image, but also to the place where the picture was taken. The problem is that in the image information, EXIF data, smartphones with GPS module indicates the data of shooting, day and exact time, country, city, address, GPS coordinates of latitude and longitude. What if the picture was taken inside a building? Then also the exact address with the street address, house number, and even the postal code. The Ukrainian operator only has to upload your photo to the EXIF data viewing service and send you a 152 millimeter package or a HIMAR package. True. And I will be the first one personally to say I did not know there was that much information stored in cell phone taken photos. I did not know. You're much better off just having a map and a compass. I love this one. Point 19. How dangerous is artillery fire? The armed forces of Ukraine are armed with Soviet and foreign systems of cannon, rockets, artillery, and mortars close to them in terms of characteristics. A cannon, artillery shell, and mine makes a sound in flight reminiscent of the flapping of wings of a dove. The sound of a flying rocket projectile is reminiscent of the sound of a slate being pulled over sand. The sound of a rupture is sharp, short, with a charismatic crack of tearing metal. A black cloud of a mixture of dust and burnt explosives up to 2-3 meters high forms at the site of the projectile rupture. I'm guessing that means impact. At mines up to a meter, when undermining, the most common in the armed forces of Ukraine, 122 millimeter high explosive fragmentation projectile, 400 to 500 lethal, weighing at least about 5 gram fragments are formed. Half of them go into the ground and fly out of the affected area, losing their lethal force. The effective radius of destruction on solid ground is 30 meters. On soft soils, when a funnel is formed, 1 meter deep and 2 meters wide. The damage radius is reduced to 10 meters. The spread of fragments reaches 400 meters, affecting factors 152 millimeter projectiles, 1.5 times above what I just mentioned. An 82 millimeter mortar fragmentation mine, when detonated, produces 150 to 200 lethal fragments with a damage radius of 18 meters. The spread of individual fragments can reach 100 to 150 meters. The diameter of the funnel, the diameter of the funnel at break is up to 80 centimeters deep, about 10 centimeters. The damaging factor of 120 millimeter mortar of mine is 101.5 times higher. The bigger it gets, the more explosive it gets. That's pretty straightforward. Dig in, dig trenches. Great. Point 20. Artillery is not as terrible as they say about it. Unless you're on the impact of it. Okay, they're actually showing an impact picture here. So how can I show you this picture? Well, I guess I'm going to have to show you a picture. I have to be a little creative here. Oh, sorry about that. I actually did not think I was going to have to present pictures. Share screen. Window 2. Oh, that one. That one. So this is the picture we're looking at. That is the one we're talking about now. And now you will go away. Sorry, did not expect that to be a thing. So what they say about this picture, which is a trench that has surrounded by artillery holes. Calculations show how only 160 shells of 122 caliber, or 8 to 10 per soldier, are required to defeat a position in open area. But to defeat 75% of the targets in an equipped platoon stronghold, 1,250 high explosive fragmentation shells are already required. In terms of 60 shells per fighter, taking into account the container, this is almost 2.5 tons, which still needs to be delivered to the guns, unloaded, loaded into the barrel. And image number 1 is the result of artillery shelling on a position of the squad. Heap lay down, but not all passed. Not a single soldier in the trench was hurt. The conclusion is simple. An artillery strike is not as terrible as the reaction of untrained servicemen to it. Even a primitive prone firing trench or a shell crater reduces the risk of being killed or injured by 10 times. A steel helmet or body armor protects a person's vital organs from most fragments. The armor of armored personnel carriers, infantry fighting vehicles, fragments of shells and mines do not penetrate. And further, it takes a whole 5 minutes for a howitzer battery to fire 160 shells on an identified target. And we have enough time to take cover from artillery fire or leave the affected area. Okay, that's fair enough advice, except there's also air bursts and... Okay, for straight impact prone artillery, fair enough, you dig in, you're safer. But there are so many other things that that comes into that. And I don't know if this report will cover that later, but we are going to try to dig into it. So, signs of an impending artillery raid. The appearance of unmanned aerial vehicles in the sky above a unit may be a harbinger of imminent artillery strikes. The explosion of a smoke projectile, white smoke, near our positions means artillery sighting. The determination of installations for shooting to kill paired bursts of shells at our positions. One with overshoot, the other one with undershoot. The enemy uses a fork technique for capturing a target in range, urgently take cover or change position. That reminds me a little bit of how battleships would target each other, where you would straddle a target and sight your way in. I'm not an artillerist. 22. It is difficult to prevent an artillery attack, but it is possible. As a rule, the artillery attack is carried out on a pre-identified target, so do not become a target. Disguise yourself. Fire correction indicates the presence of observers or technical means of artillery, reconnaissance, drones, quadcopters, camera, for fixing roads, etc. Quadcopters can be destroyed centrally by the fire of the unit. Quadcopters can be destroyed centrally by the fire of the unit. even from the Rifle weapons. With light or medium UAVs, it is more difficult to control the front line for defense. We need funds for the EV and air defense. Artillery spotters can be within line of sight of objective dominating the terrain from which a good view of the positions is opened. Their presence is established by observers and suppressed by regular fire. It's very interesting that they put in the report with the advice to their soldiers that they need money for electronic warfare and air defense. That is actually very interesting. Bracketing, is that I knew there had to be an artillerist out there somewhere. Thank you. 23. During an artillery raid, the main thing is calmness. Ukrainian artillerymen usually fire in series of 2 to 3 shots, 3 to 4 minutes pause to make adjustments, and then again 4 to 6 shots to finish off. As a rule, there are no more than 3 such series. If the artillery fire is rapid, with a high consumption of ammunition, then our artillery is working and we must urgently establish cooperation to stop this friendly fire. At the first sight of shelling, immediately fall to the ground or dive into cover under armor in a trench, a recess in the ground, or shell crater, a capital structure. Do not try to hide from the artillery attack under trees. The projectile, fuse mine, will work when it hits the branches and form an air blast, increasing the affected area. Crawling movement, no running, and panic. If you come under artillery or mortar fire during the march, then leave the affected area at full speed. It is difficult for the enemy artillerymen to calculate and conduct mobile fire. Stopping this, you turn into an ideal motionless target. Help the wounded after the shelling in the shelter, otherwise you will need help already. Makes sense? 24. This cat has 9 lives and the sapper has 1. Fair enough. The second reason for our losses after the artillery of the armed forces of Ukraine was mines. There are several rules in the work of detecting and disarming them. Do not dismantle ammunition. Do not experiment with it. Do not try to neutralize explosive devices you find. 2. Watch where you're going. First, study the route at eye level. If there is anywhere a fishing line or wire stretched to an explosive device, then look down at your feet. Of course, it is difficult to see the PMN hidden in the ground, but the PFM1 pedal mine is quite more distinguishable. It has a little thing that sticks up. Detour the destroyed sections of the road along the sides can be mined. Yeah, if you mine the road, but you also mine the detouring side, so because you know that enemy, you will take another road except on the main road, and that'll be armed, also be mined. Yes. 4. There will be most likely another 2-3 mines. If you find one, there'll be more. The corpses of our fighters on the territory of the enemy are most likely mined for unloading. Everybody booby traps the dead. Very sad. Before evacuation, they are moved from their place with a cable or rope. 6. The first question that is asked to the prisoner is where the mines are planted in the defense system of his unit. 7. Tripwire grenades will not protect you from enemy DRGs. Specialists will remove them without problems, but their own servicemen are guaranteed to be blown up. This is very happy. Anyway, 25. Military traffic rules. To avoid losses on the march, you must follow simple rules. The distance between cars is at least 30 meters. This will exclude the possibility of hitting the column with concentrated artillery fire. To repel attacks on the flanks of the column from behind the garden. The barrels of regular weapons and military equipment, tanks, infantry, fighting vehicles, armored personnel carriers, are deployed in a herringbone. Not even cars, trunks to the right, at an angle of 45 degrees in the direction of travel, even to the left. This provides immediate concentration of fire to destroy the enemy. The personnel is inside the armored personnel carriers, BMPs, and not from above. The armored service serves as a reliable shelter from bullets and fragments, and the absence of crowding on the armored excludes, in case of confusion, losses from one's own fire. Observation over the armor, hiding up to the waist in hatches, is carried out by the commander of the vehicle in the direction of movement, and two observers on both sides of the road. They are also involved in repelling fire with standard weapons, enemy attacks. The experience of the military operations in Afghanistan and North Caucasus have shown that a single movement, even of combat vehicles, increases the risk of their attacks by the enemy. Don't travel alone, don't bunch up. That's not wrong, and you see a lot of the ones who do get in trouble is because they literally bunched up and got hit, including the Ukrainians made those mistakes too. 26. The night is dark and full of horrors. The advent of night vision sights, night vision goggles, including thermal imaging ones, gave rise to a lot of rumors about their exceptional effectiveness. In fact, all night devices are more useful as surveillance devices, but for effective fire, they're not very good. Too many conditions must be met in order to successfully apply such a night light. Among them are the possibility of its reconciliation on weapons in the state of batteries, combat factors affecting observation, etc. The constant work of night vision devices tires, blinds the observer, and makes him a target himself. The pupil of the NVD eyepiece illuminates the observer with a greenish glow. Necessarily depends. Good observed through other devices. Therefore, it is necessary to turn on the NVD only when necessary to protect yourself from the enemy with night vision devices. You must firstly observe blackout. Do not light fire or smoke. In the night light, the light of a cigarette is noticeable at a distance of up to 500 meters. A burning match up to 1 kilometer. The light from a fire up to 8 kilometers. Second, do not make noise. Human steps on soft ground can be heard up to 30 meters, coughing up and speaking up to 100 meters. The scream and noise of a running diesel engine up to 1,000 meters. Thirdly, it is necessary to choose how to close practice for moving it. Sorry, let me try that again. Thirdly, it is necessary to choose low and closed places for moving at night. Avoid light clearings, move from cover to cover, and further night vision devices are illuminated by bright light sources. A bright fire in the neutral zone, illuminating reactive cartridges, launched along a flat trajectory towards the enemy, forced him to stop observing and protect the lens of his device. No, night lights. Sorry. 27. Bullet is a fool. In combat operations in Ukraine, losses from small arms fire amount to 12%. Less than half of them, or 5% of the total casualty statistics, are dead. Such a low effectiveness of small arms fire is characteristic of all recent wars. For one killed in the Great Patriotic War, there was about 25,000 industrially produced cartridges. In Vietnam, almost 250,000. And this is by weight 2.5 tons. The low effectiveness is explained by the psychological unpreparedness of the soldiers for real battle. The most often, they fire in the direction of the enemy without aiming, from the animal to the one from the chest above the head, while burning an incredible number of rounds. That is actually really interesting. 5% of total KIA are from bullets. That's a really, really interesting. Thank you, Sydney. That is really interesting to see. Only 5%. So the majority by far are killed by artillery and mines, but only 5% by bullets. 12% hit by bullets. That's not a lot. I will say, if memory serves, and some of you guys can look me up on that one, I do seem to remember that in Vietnam it was 7,000 or 8,000 rounds fired for each enemy KIA or wounded, not 250,000. That's just rough memory on my part. I could be wrong. Not really important. That is, they use whatever the examples they use is what it is. 28, backpack and over. The more about archery. The range of effective shooting from modern types of small arms from an unprepared position does not exceed 150 meters, and the maximum hit is recorded at a distance of up to 75 meters. Let's take into account the features of automatic fire, characterized not only by an increased consumption of ammunition, but most importantly by a large spread of the bullets. If at 100 meters the first bullet of the line from a machine gun hits the center of the belt target, the second one flies 6 to 7 centimeters higher and to the right. The third and fourth bullet passes already 1.5 meters, 2 meters from the target. Shooting combat, of course, is not for the weak, but you should not be afraid of it either. Irretrievable losses in such battle during the Afghan War, for example, turned out to be less than 0.05% of the total number of Soviet warriors. 0.05% of Russian soldiers fighting in Afghanistan were killed in firefights, they say. I would like to see other numbers on that. I'm very curious about that one. Select your switch, just go to 1. 29, attention sniper at work. So on the average, half the euro of rounds to bring down a fighter, a good sniper spends no more than 2 bullets on hitting a target. For this, snipers are not loved either by their own or by strangers. They are a headache for everyone. The enemy is kept in suspense by sniper fire, their own lives in anticipation of the mandatory responsibility for his deeds. Signs of sniper work. Any bullet hit to the head. Hit against the backgrounds of sound masking, artillery, or grenade launching shots, etc. Selective bullet damage to an officer, signalman, observer. Single shot into the wall near your position or any noticeable spot. This is a shooter with a specific landmark with a range. At a specific landmark with a range. Shooting a fighter walking last in the group so that those in front do not understand what is happening. Non-fatal wounds of a fighter with subsequent defeat of all those who assist him. Shooting the curious caught on the bait in the form of a specially planted object. They use a slang that I can't pronounce. Slang for something awesome, like a goodie, a prized item, canned food, cigarettes, balls, something. You plant something and somebody goes to pick it up and get shot. Appearance of a quadcopter over your position during shelling. The second number of a sniper pair is working with him. He corrects the sniper's fire. My friends in the Ukrainian International Brigade are telling me that officers and medics are the preferred target of Russian snipers, if I can add anything to what was said here. Point number 30, where's the sniper hiding? In broken armored vehicles, fire and smoke remains inside, the sound is muted. At the edge of a forest, landing behind a small shrub or hanging down branches of trees, so that the flash and the smoke from the shot did not go beyond these branches, from the debris of the premise located on the shady side of a building. In this case, the arrow is almost invisible, and in order to hide the flash of the shot. The snipers hide behind furniture. In the window opening of buildings, the sniper should be looked for in the lower right away from you corner, behind the natural cover for him, window corner, window sill, wall. That will to his left. In a trench under a fallen, specifically placed concrete slab, covering from stray bullets and splinters. Previously, a sniper often used an artificial stump. Modern shooters use old tires. Could use an old tire. The embrasure in it is disguised as a natural impulse. That's very interesting, because in the Second World War, Russian snipers were notorious for hiding inside destroyed tanks and vehicles. Again, they do things that stand out, but things that are expected to be on the battlefield, but do stand out still. 31, fight the enemy sniper. It all comes down to finding a sniper position and pouring everything that fires, burns, and explodes there. 1. Calculation of the sector in which the sniper works. The most prompt is the report of the observer who spotted the shot. If they missed it, then the survey of witnesses of the bullet defeat of our fighter. The study of the trajectory of the arrival of the bullet when hit are used. A sniper is issued by his supporting group from 1 to 2 to 5 to 7 people and quadcopters of an assistant sniper. The drone flies no more than 20-30 minutes and then returns as operator rule. 2. Determining the distance of the sniper's position. After determining the sector of the sniper's work based on the data on the effective distance of the bullet fired, hit to the head, for instance, 50 to 100 meters, in the body up to 300 meters, fire, terror, shelling, everything that protrudes. You fire and you shell everything that protrudes up to 500-600 meters. The approximate location of the sniper's position is established. Okay, what they're saying here is interesting, because if the Russian expectation is that snipers are within 50 to 100 meters to achieve a headshot, maybe that is based on, I don't know what weaponry that's based on, because no one snipes that short, up to 300 meters, even that short of a distance in modern wars. Whether you're looking at, if you're looking at basically M4 or an AR-10 configuration, 308, you will go 500, 600, 700, 800 meters far further away. Don't know if that's an expectation that they're basing this evaluation on Russian optics and not on what Western armies are issuing to the Ukrainians. Just an observation on my point. 3. Sniper suppression. The best solution is massive shelling from heavy guns, mortars, MLRS, in order to plow the detected square. Very efficient fire from regular tanks, infantry vehicle, fighting vehicles, APCs, volley fire from RPGs and grenade launchers, or such exotic things as attracting counter sniper fire will do, if they are there, of course. 4. Anti-sniper prevention. Having found any suspicious position close to one's position suitable for hiding an enemy fire, in a brazier, in a wall, a gap, etc., one should bomb it with the fire of tank guns, infantry fighting vehicles, armored personnel carriers, RPGs, regular fire from small arms, creating a threat to the enemy sniper, especially before our offensive, it says, our side offensive, which is something you also have seen in most wars. Elevated positions, Second World War, elevated positions, church towers, chimneys, anything would be shelled by everybody. If there's a point that would protrude from the landscape from where you could see far, you could place an artillery observer, a sniper, anything in there. Any army would shell anything on the other side that would be suspected of being capable of doing that. So that's not really strange or new. 32. How to behave in places where snipers work. Don't come out of hiding. Any movement is only running from cover to cover. Identify places with terrain features favor the work of an enemy sniper and put signs there with the inscription, "Attention, enemy sniper at work." It saved many lives during the war years. The wounded by a sniper is evacuated from an open place in an armored vehicles if there are no risks of its defeat from anti-tank weapons, by dragging from a shelter with a rope with a climbing carbine. If you need to drag a load across an open area of fire, do it lightly by running or crawling through a dangerous place and then pull up the heavy object on a rope. I'm not entirely sure if this is a translation issue. If they say if you have to pull, here it says an object, that denotes the man they're trying to rescue. But I think we all know where this is generally going. Yeah, don't drag him off with at speed. This is interesting. 33. Don't snipe. Even if you're an excellent shooter and operate as part of a unit, do not conduct a so-called hunt from your location. The enemy will soon get tired of your shooting and an enemy artillery or mortar strike of retaliation will surely fall on the heads of your colleagues. Operate either as part of your unit or from a standalone position. True. 34. Personal weapon. The choice of personal weapon for the participant in the special military operation in Ukraine is small. Most of these are AKMs, AK-74s, and their modifications. 7.62 millimeter AKM is heavier thanks to a more powerful cartridge. It is not as sensitive to dirt and powder deposits. The 5.46 millimeter AK-74 is lighter. It is more comfortable to shoot. If you still have a choice, then it is optimal to take weapons for the ammunition used in your unit. That makes sense. I actually wasn't entirely, I thought most Russian units have basically the same ammunition, but that is just added to your logistical load, obviously. But also, you want to choose the weaponry. I didn't know you had a choice in the Russian army. I thought you got what you got. We're learning this together. But I will always go with the heavier weapon. I know it's heavier, but give me a 308 any day instead of the little 5.56 thing. That's just my personal thing. So, 35. Problems of accurately shooting from AK. Properly brought to normal combat, a Kalashnikov assault rifle allows you to confidently hit the handle of an aluminum spoon at 100 meters. As for the complaints about the low efficiency of automatic fire, the main problem is psychological unpreparedness of a person for a meaningful perception of the battle and, oddly enough, an excess of ammunition. A soldier of the Red Army reached Berlin with a wearable ammunition load of 70 rounds for a mosquito. What? I'm sure that doesn't mean mosquito. Anyway, experienced automatic riflemen during the Great Patriotic War said that they needed one disc of 71 rounds in a drum PPSH store, and it is not a shortage of ammunition. Pro 100, the more experienced and brave the warrior, the less often he shoots. And if he fires, then for sure, shooting in combat must be meaningful. Short 2-round bursts or singles fire while changing position. Sorry, ladies. Translating from Russian, this is a little bit of a, sometimes we guess a little bit, I guess. 36, sight 3 and aim at the belt. The basis of marksmanship is the determination of the distance to target. In the turmoil of the battle, there is no time to calculate the thousandth formula. Therefore, an experienced warrior sets his rear sights on the aiming bar of the machine gun to the number 3, which corresponds to the range of 300 meters, and aims at the middle of the opponent's figure. At the same time, 100 meters of distance. The excess of the point of impact over the aiming point will be 25 centimeters for the AKM and 13 centimeters for the AK-74. This is for those who want to break the handle of a spoon. I have to try this. If it is too difficult for someone, feel free to put the rear sight on the aiming bar in the P position. Corresponds to the point-blank range, 440 meters for the AK-74, 350 meters for the AKM, where the height of the bullet trajectory is not greater than the height of chest target, and the shooter can fire without taking into account vertical corrections. Remember, when you fire, the bullet does not go in a straight line. It bounces up and then comes down, depending what bullet it is. I think the 308, I seem to remember, is about 300 meters, where it's actually at level with the muscle. I don't remember the all the specific details on the AK, but I'm going to try to see if I can hit a spoon with it 100 meters. I don't think that's not doable at all. 37. I don't see, I don't shoot. Constant moral and psychological overstrain, fatigue, poor visibility, these factors of the battle seriously affects the psyche of the combatants. There is a desire to shoot at everything that can pose a threat. There is the advice of the experienced to wet everything that moves. Keep a cartridge constantly in the chamber. shoot at every rustle. The result is such a science are killed and wounded colleagues. Usually they fire without seeing the target. Unfired beginners or finished cowards. If the former can still be taught, then the latter must be kept away. From them, threats comes no less than from the enemy, and also crazy shooting, a great opportunity for the enemy to open our positions and inflict mortar or artillery strikes on us. Therefore, the observance of the principle I don't see, I don't shoot should become the main rule of any fighter. Do not allow coworkers to hold weapons loaded, twirl them in different directions, or point them at coworkers, even as a joke. Maintain constant voice contact with coworkers. Don't shoot without seeing the target. That is, yeah, pretty damn solid advice. And don't point your guns at anybody in any situation at all. I have funny stories. That is not relevant here. 38. I shoot, I hit. I can't believe this translates into this. A few life hacks for shooting combat. Does anybody use the word hack nowadays? Even the Russians? Fine. In case of an unexpected encounter with the enemy or in conditions of limited visibility in a forest in tall grass, unmowed fields, shoot low, at the level of the knee of the intended enemy. He most likely lay down or crouches as to not be a target. Fire in the building is best done from the depths of the room, so the sound of the shot is muffled and the flash becomes hardly noticeable. Approximately 90% of the world's population is right-handed. That is why shooting at the flash of a shot from the side of the enemy, moving the aiming point half a foot figure to the right, in the window opening of the building, the arrow should be, that must be the muzzle of the bullet, should be locked for the lower right corner from you, because the natural shelter for him. The corner of the window and the wall will be on the left from him. I should have done graphs. I'm sorry, guys. To the right, turning to the right is much more inconvenient to shoot than turning to the left. This is a psychological feature of the body. Therefore, in battle, it is better to bypass the corners of buildings counterclockwise. Staying away from these corners with such a movement, the enemy loses the advantage. Staying in one place during the course of a gunfight without changing position means exposing yourself to additional risk. It has been established that only a fifth of the personnel in battle act intelligently and conduct aimed fire. As a rule, these are commanders, snipers, machine gunners. When such fighters are detected on enemy positions, they are destroyed by concentrated fire by all means of the unit. After that, enemy losses combat stability. That's very interesting, the way they phrase this. I hope you understand what he's saying, but it is one thing I'm taking away from the advice they're giving their infantry, their basic infantry soldiers, is not a whole lot of respect. They really are giving them the simple, dumbed-down advice and leaving everything to the commanders. And if you get a bad commander, I guess you're in trouble. 39. Sometimes it happens. Even the most reliable weapons require maintenance and care. The main reason for delays in firing a Kalashnikov assault rifle are malfunctions of the magazine and contamination of the rubbing parts of the weapon's mechanisms. A faulty magazine is replaced by another. A dirty mechanism are eliminated by their cleaning. Ideally, of course, clean the weapons after each shooting, which is unlikely in combat conditions. Yes, and you can't find gun lubricant. Under these conditions, you can use kerosene, diesel fuel, WD-40, and even soapy water. The main thing then is to wipe the parts of the weapons with a high quality and dry, so that there's no traces of this left, which grow with dust and cause delays. In no case do not lubricate the weapons with automotive transmission or even more So vegetable oils, having thickened, they tightly glue the moving mechanisms of the weapons. The Russians have WD-40. Um, you don't use diesel fuel. Yeah, I mean, AK-47, ever jam? I never had one that jam. I had one that suddenly went automatic on me. God knows why. 40, AK and weapons tuning. The ingenious designer Kalashnikov created a reliable, convenient machine gun in which there's nothing superfluous that could cling, interfere, or create discomfort for the owner. The machine is perfectly balanced for its design features. Therefore, tuning the machine gun with all sorts of devices have no functional significance, but an elementary show off people who are far from real participations in hostilities. Picatinny rails injure palms, clinging, tearing clothes, and when crawling, they contribute to contamination of weapons. Collimator sights, unlike the standard mechanical one, limits the view and does not allow the shooter to instantly transfer fire to another distance. On the third and fourth day, as a rule, it is simply lost, loosened in the fasteners. Expensive flare arresters and DTKs do not do anything to improve accuracy, but they upset the balance of the weapon and make it heavier. Twin magazines connected with scotch tape or duct tape, you can recognize the headquarters or newcomers who want to look like tough fighters. In fact, twin stores are a sign of insecurity and even fear. They say that their owners have not been in real battle and does not really understand that such magazines carry the risks of contamination and breakage, upset the balance of the weapon, and make accurate shooting impossible. But I mean, tying your magazines together looks really good in Hollywood, so I get where they get the idea. Um, I mean, I'm sorry, I'm an American. We accessorize everything. Anything that can be mounted on it. If I could put a coffee machine on my AR, I would. Anyway, 41. Military majors against fighting bums. There's no universal military uniform. The main requirement for it is the strength of the fabric and the ease of use. The fashion for military uniforms that has come to us with many pockets, zippers, patches, knee pads, etc., passes after the first 2 or 3 weeks of actual participation in hostilities. The most important thing when choosing clothes for war is that it does not differ from the uniform of your unit or the army as a whole. Otherwise, there's a great risk of falling under fire from friendly fire of one's own colleagues who has taken you as an opponent. Experience suggests the need for year-round wear under uniforms of elastic, moisture-wicking thermal underwear creates comfort, safety from scuffs, minor bruises, scratches, insect bites. I have yet not found any uniforms that will save me from insect bites in Eastern Europe or ticks in Poland. Anyway, it's interesting that they use different uniforms, or it's even allowed. I wonder if anybody has the Russian uniform manual anywhere. I just want to look something up. 42. Sneakers, berets, or boots. The Special Operation Ukraine presents a number of special requirements for military footwear. First, all weather and weatherproof. Secondly, tensile strength and reliable protection of the legs from injury. Thirdly, the soles must be solid, provide good grip, not be pierced by broken glass, rebar, or short pieces of metal. Fair enough. For these reasons, sneakers that have proven themselves in Afghanistan are not suitable for the Ukraine theater operations. Uniform high-top boots hold the ankles well and protect the legs from cuffs and injuries. This is where the advantage ends. In the Ukraine war, they die after a couple of months of operation. Tactical trekking boots are lighter, more comfortable, have moisture-wicking properties, and good grip on the ground. In such boots, the risks of rubbing bloody blisters on your feet are reduced, but the really cool Loa and Hikes are not available because the price are 25 to 30,000 rubles. That is about $300. And in muddy conditions, they live no longer than state-owned boots. In these conditions, it is worth thinking about cowhide boots and foot cloths. By the way, during the winter ardent operations, the Germans shot in boots were ill with pneumonia 4 times less than Americans who wore boots. Okay, if I'm just going to try to translate the translation. In the Ardennes operations, the Germans who had the German boots were far more better. Okay, during the World War II operation in the Ardennes, lots of snow, the Germans were less sick than the Americans who wore regular boots and gaiters. The Germans wore the regular black leather boots and long boots. Interesting. 43. A friend is a maid. Socks and boots live for 2 or 3 days. Therefore, in a situation where they have become unusable and there are no spare ones, you can use foot cloths, which are made of soft fabric, from sheets, shirts, t-shirts, etc. Cut out 2 strips of fabric measuring 35 to 75 centimeters. It is important that they are without seams and scars to rub legs. The foot cloths fill more space in the shoes. In case of getting wet, it is easy to rewind it with the dry side on the foot and the wet side on the shin, which minimizes abrasions during long walking. It is permissible to wear wet shoes on dry socks and foot cloths, but not vice versa. During the movement, you can dry socks and foot cloths on the body under the upper layer of clothing. It's really interesting because that is very much out of World War II, where the soldiers couldn't get socks because nobody had anything, and you have them on your body and you up against you and you dry them that way. It is just interesting to think that they have a military that they might not be able to supply with socks, something that simple. It's very, very interesting that that's the situation. All right. A 44. A soldier does not need extra property. No matter how weapons and military technology changes, the weight of equipment worn by a fighter is 30 to 35 kilos, has remained stable for the last 150 years in almost all the armies of the world. What a fighter really needs to have with him: regular weapon and ammunition, 12 kilograms. Just as a rough ballpark, a pound is 2.2 kilos. Now 2.2 pounds to a kilo. So divide by half. Helmet and body armor, 9 kilos. Unloading vest, 1 kilo. Small infantry shovel, 1.5 kilo. Water, 1.5 liters minimum. Dry rations, 2-day allowance, 2 kilos. Raincoat tent, 1.5 kilos. Army bowler hat with a spoon. I believe that must better be a help now. Army bowler hat with a spoon, 0.5 kilos. Socks, 2 pairs. First aid kit, toiletries, 0.5 kilos. Uniform boots, belt, 3.5 kilos. Raid backpack, 3.5 kilos. Total 37 kilograms. What was that, about 70 pounds? 75. That's 76. 80. And the commander demands that the fighters carry an additional ammo, 10 offensive and defensive grenades, ammunition for heavy weapons of the unit, etc. You can't fight with that weight. Therefore, the wise warrior carefully decides how to limit the load on the ridge. That probably means on his back. As a rule, to solve a combat mission not related to combat in the city, 4 magazines for a machine gun, 2 grenades in unloading, 1.5 liters of water, and 1 small infantry shovel for 2 people is enough. Total, with the form, 15 kilograms. Bulletproof vest and helmet, 9 kilograms, is optional. The rest is stored in a backpack and transported in a combat vehicle. However, if the battle caught you on the march in full gear, dump everything superfluous without regret, leave weapons and ammunition, collect the rest later. I'm pretty sure that would translate to take weapons, ammunition, collect the rest later. It is very interesting. There are some contradictions in this advice that if you really were to hammer down and ask about, well, they're saying one thing here, but the opposite over here. Anyway, 45, 150 years in service. In the Tsarist and Soviet armies, all the property of the soldiers fit into a duffel bag made of tent fabric with a volume of about 30 liters. As 150 years of experience in its operation shows, nothing better can be invented. Brilliantly simple design, it is used as a backpack, as a filter for water purification, for a head bag for accompanying a prisoner, a rakova, and everything that soldiers' ingenuity is capable of. Its own weight is 240 grams. An ideal useful volume allows you to accommodate everything that a fighter needs. A jacket, a sleeping bag are attached to the side straps. If necessary, nothing extra should be shoved in. The quilted straps of the duffel bag do not injure and at the same time do not interfere with aiming shooting with an emphasis on the shoulder. The bag is convenient as a support for shooting from a prone position. In addition, it is not a pity to quit and act lightly. It means it's not easy, it's not hard to drop it and act lightly and react. Not fashionable, not aesthetically pleasing, but cheap and practical. That's not wrong. 46, always keep with you. A small infantry sapper shovel a shovel is a soldier's best friend. In a war, one cannot survive without a sapper shovel. A fighter must constantly dig in. The sapper shovel is an excellent tool for chopping blows. It can be used as an armored plate and even as a frying pan for cooking. The main conditions for the versatility of the shovel is a sharp blade with a stupid shovel, it says here. I don't think it, as with stupid people, you won't get much. The lower and side ribs are sharpened on the MPL from the front, concave side, and chamfer width is 3 to 5 millimeters. Pretty sure it doesn't mean a stupid shovel, but I'm not sure. A knife is an absolute must for everyone. In 99 cases of 100, you will need a knife only for cutting bread, sausage, or peeling potatoes. Good, of course, if there is a multi-tool, but it will not replace the simple kitchen knife with a blade up to 15 centimeters. As for fighters with tactical gut clutters sticking out for show from the unloading, it's like feathers in the tail of a peacock, more to impress. Okay. Gloves, universal hand protection. Hands account for the majority of injuries. And any tactical gloves with protective elements will protect them from injury, cuts, burns. Full finger gloves are better than fingerless ones, but fingerless ones are easier to shoot. If there are no tactical gloves, they, especially when digging trenches, will be successfully replaced by workers. 25 rubles per pair. That is very cheap, like $2 bucks. Something like that. Important little things. Knipsers is the correct word for nail clippers. Without care, nails will break, causing pain and discomfort. Crockery, bowl, spoon, mug, preferably stainless steel, matches, preferably long burning ones, lighter, Scotch tape, very useful things. 47. Without water, neither there or here. In winter, a person needs about 2 liters of water per day, and in the heat, it raises to about 4. Lack of water causes rapid fatigue. Therefore, whenever possible, a soldier must stock up on water. 1.5 liters is an individual water which must be stored in every soldier's duffel bag. In a combat vehicle, usually in plastic canisters, tanks, etc., a supply of water of up to 100 liters per department fighting unit. Where to get water? To get started, study the map of the area where wells, springs, streams, lakes, rivers are marked. Such waters is conditionally suitable for consumption, but after boiling or filtering. It is completely. In this case, it is good to have a portable filter for water purification in extreme conditions. See the appendix, DIY water filter. In settlements, water must be sought in the fire department, in hospitals, and sanitary and epidemiological stations. There are special storage facilities for disinfected water A decent amount of water after turning off the pumps remains in the water pipes in the basement of high-rise buildings, especially located in the lowlands. Water should be consumed as thirst arises in small portions, no more than 100-150 grams. Anything more will immediately come out of in the heat later. I will say to that when it comes to drinking off streams, and even if you are in the mountain, I actually want to stress this, especially to you soldiers out there who are doing mountain maneuvers. Um, if you are on maneuver and you high up and you see this cold winter streamy water coming down of the mountain, and all you can see is snow up there, and you believe it's clean, and you drink it unfiltered or and all unpurified. If a deer died way up in the mountains, you're going to get really sick. There's possibly, it wouldn't take much for a dead animal or something to fall into a stream way up where you can't see it, and the bacteria from that you will drink, you will be violently sick. Purify everything. Do not count on a stream water, no matter how beautiful it is. If Bambi is standing next to you drinking, it may make you sick, but not Bambi. That's just a thing. Boil it, purified. Always have water purification with you. If you're a civilian, have water purification with you. That's just my 2 cents on that. 48. War is war, but lunch is on schedule. Participation in hostilities is hard work, requiring huge energy expenditure of the body. Therefore, our dry food, IRP, MREs, depends on the menu, contains from 4,200 to 4,700 calories, and provides the body with a sufficient amount of nutrients. But that's in theory. In fact, there are 2 problems with dry tack. The first is that it doesn't exist. Second, it gets boring really quickly. And dry ration weighs more than 2 kilos and take up a fair amount in the backpack. In Afghanistan, fighters leaving for a raid in the mountains, for landing, or for combing greenery, took most energetic valuable from dry land: meats, lard, sugar, condensed milk. Not soup, cereals with compotes. At the same time, the weight was reduced 3 times, and the energy value only by 1.5. Food obtained in the course of hostilities serves as supplemental food. They ate, as a rule, twice a day, early in the morning and after sunset. We tried to diversify the diet and cook hot foods. See appendix. Unleavened wheat cakes, baked potatoes, and foil on coals. The optimal dish is kulesh, thick soup from everything that is in the backpack, plus cereals, if any. Cakes are baked from flour. They are prepared for the entire squad in the evening in shelters, in disguises, or in abandoned residences or private houses where there are stoves. Hot food invigorates the body, digests much better, breaks down quickly without bloating, and its accompanying problems, constipation or indigestion. In addition to gastronomic advantages, such catering contributions to team building, caring for comrades, and increase the combat readiness of the unit. That's true. Again, sorry, I messed up my voice a bit a couple of days ago. Anyway, 49, creeping enemies. During the Second World War, 96 soldiers out of 100 suffered from pediculosis. You know what? I'm going to just do this, because I actually do not know what that is. Somebody look that up. The basis of the army of parasites were body lice. In addition to the discomfort of unbearable itching, they carry infectious diseases, transfever, and typhoid. The number of victims of these diseases exceeded combat losses. Existing efficient sanitary products, as well as pest control chemicals, are often not available on the front lines. Our fighters have found an ingenious solution to this problem. In the clean barrel, large pan, or such height, again, translation, sorry, so that the form laid out on them does not touch the bottom of the walls. 2 pieces of wood were inserted crosswise along with the diameter, and the clothes were hung on them, under the disinfectant and tightly closed with a lid. Taking away boiling clothes or steaming clothes. The barrel was placed on the stove and fire was kindled under it. Half of an hour later, in a hot barrel, the parasites died. Steaming clothes. Knits. Yeah. Steaming clothes. After that, clothes were hung under the miserable. Half an hour later, the hot barrel, the parasites died. There are also known as methods of dealing with lice, such as long-term boiling of the form up to an hour, washing in gasoline, freezing up 12 hours in a refrigerator, and digging them into the ground, with the small edges left at the top, on which the lice are collected for subsequent destruction. Okay, so you bury your clothes, have a little bit of stick sticking up, and all the lice will crawl up to the top, and that's where I did not know that. I'm sorry. And one more detail, it is noticed that the advancing army suffers less from lice activity. Resolute, cheerful fighters have almost no lice, but they can often be found in cowards and whiners. So if you advance upon the enemy actively and in a cheerful manner, you will have less lice than if you sit at home whining about it in the trench. Just going to leave that one out there. Okay. All those British and French soldiers with all the lice problems in World War I, they were just cowards. They should have cheerfully attacked each other instead. The lice would have been gone. Okay. Sorry, that's a little silly. 50. Rules of the military tenant. In the conditions of total intelligence, which is conducted by our army, the enemy, of course, is best placed in populated areas. On the territory of industrial enterprises with a system of basements and bomb shelters, techniques takes cover in workshops. Not sure where we're going with this. It is necessary to stay in the private sector to a third line of houses, in the second or third line of houses, while setting up guards 50 to 100 meters from the outskirts of the settlement. Choose to stay in a house with a basement and a source of water or a well. It is better if the basement is taken outside the house and stands separately. It will be a reliable shelter in case of shelling. Do not stay in the most conspicuous and large houses. They are the most likely to be shot or mined. Our scout, Lilia Starinov, destroyed German headquarters during the Second World War by mining such buildings. And today, Ukraine rocketmen are destroying ours, where the chiefs did not study military history. They love luxury and comfort. Well, that's what I hear about Russian officers. Do not set up a posture next to a clearly defined landmark. Corner of a grove, power line, separate building, a house on the outskirts of a settlement, administration, etc. This place will be hit by the very first artillery shot because its coordinates are easily calculated from the map. If you happen to settle down in a field or steppe, then do not be lazy there. Occupy the main position and a couple of false ones, in which you dump garbage and household waste. Make a fire there if you need to. In short, you demonstrate active habitation. Or on the main one, there is a minimum of movement. Opening up 2-3 company defenders is a hellish work. Building more than 2 or 3 different positions. That's what that means. But it's a sure way to deceive the enemy's reconnaissance and an artillery in order to survive. In all cases, as experience shows, it is better to withdraw military equipment from the positions so as not to provoke fire, artillery, and shelter no less than a kilometer from the basis position, providing 2-3 separate routes of advancement to it. 51. Dig in. Remain alive. With an artillery attack, the chances of survival, a soldier in the trench, are 10 times higher than that of an untrenched one, and in connected with a massive use of long-range weapons by the enemy, the concepts of front and rear are blurred. Danger is everywhere now, therefore those who really fought do not consider it shameful to dig a trench for themselves. At a halt during a march on the front line, when it's not possible to build the strong point of the unit in the places of deployment or the second echelon. As a rule, trenches are dug at least 1 meter deep, 80 to 90 centimeters wide, so that two people can sleep side by side, warming each other. And the raincoat tent is wide enough to protect from the weather. Conspicuous branches, straws laid on the bottom will save you from dampness if conditions permit. The trench is covered with branches, slate, plywood, sprinkled with soil, which serves as a shelter from small fragments. In the cold season, in such a trench, you can place a Polaris or a mini rocket stove. See Appendix Scout Bonfire Smokeless Swedish Candle. I will post this so you can pick it apart yourselves. Polaris rocket stove. If there is time, the trench is equipped with a foxhole, a niche in the side wall facing the enemy. Sometimes when equipping platoons and company strongholds, commanders involve equipment that is not adapted for such work, most often road graders. As a result, instead of a narrow trench that protects the fighters from bullets and shrapnel, a crooked pit with crumbling edges is obtained. It does not save from artillery fire. From times, it does not cover the control quadcopter, and in bad weather, it turns into a muddy pond, not a shelter, but a trap for our own unit. That's an interesting way of putting it. Another ambush during the construction of the supporting structure is associated with a lack of drainage system at the bottom of the trench. Without it, trenches will fill with rain, water, and mud, which creates discomfort for its inhabitants. A drainage ditch to the depth of the shovel bayonet, 20 centimeters, is dug out for the entire length of the trench, and its back sides go to the lowest point of the support, where a catchment well is arranged. The damp and viscous bottom of the trench is covered with gravel, sand, and straw in the presence of time and material. Whether a diversion ditch is arranged in the middle of trenches, overlapping it with a deck of boards or poles. Digging trenches is something that if you're in the military, someone will have showed you how to. But drainage is definitely an important thing, especially when you are in places where it rains as much as it does in Central and Eastern Europe. And also, of course, you need to have. It's funny when the trench wars. They always, even when I was in boot camp, we dug a grenade hole, so the whole trench would slope towards a little hole. We dug a side hole. So if anybody threw a grenade in there, it could either roll there, or we could kick it into a little deeper hole where it would explode. I guess people don't throw hand grenades at each other in the same sense as they did during World War I. Anyway, right. 52, trench, 5 stars. When the fighting has acquired a positional character, and the fighters are forced to live for months in damp trenches, if you are not lazy, you can get comfortable. To do this, abandoned vehicles are buried in the ground at positions: a minibus, a passenger station wagon, a bread truck booth. Everything will fit. Seats are thrown out of the cabin. The floor is level with flooring, and sleeping places are increased comfort are ready. Participation, cold, shredding of earth, groundwater is nothing to do with this spruce. And if the trench is well deepened, disguised, and securely covered from above, then it can be considered as a dugout of increased comfort class. Bury your own old buildings. Again, there are some words that comes up here that just did not translate correctly. Sorry. 53, camping out of need, like that. Under these conditions, constant reconnaissance by the enemy of targets using drones and mining out of routes of advancement of our troops turn a campaign of necessity into a kind of quest with an unpredictable result. The traces of this, so to speak, activity scattered by the wind across the fields and plantings unmask defensive positions, and in order not to fly in at the most inconvenient moment, it is necessary to hide the latrines as carefully as possible. It is better to organize them in enclosed spaces, abandoned houses, workshops, farms. In positions located outside settlements, a latrine is arranged 30 to 40 meters behind the front line and connected by a communication course. The length of a ditch of the latrine is determined by the rate of 2 to 3 meters per compartment. Boards are used for its arrangement, or shipping pallets with sawn-off versions. Nothing new since the Second World War, I suppose, at first. It is even more difficult to send natural needs on the march or on the offensive. A landing trip is fraught with the risks of running into tripwires or an enemy DRG, no matter how ridiculous it may sound. But in Afghanistan, for example, it was customary to cover a comrade in this situation. Veterans who went through the Great Patriotic War said it was important to accustom the body to the toilet in the morning before dawn, and for this it is not necessary to devour the entire dry ration during the day and supplement it with products found in abandoned houses. And in general, before the fight, it is better to have an empty stomach. With a wound in the abdomen, it is less chances of peritonitis. That's true. There's some fascinating stories of people who were shot while starved or starving. Stalingrad comes to mind, and healed practically on their own because there was nothing in their bodies that were damaged. They were shot through. If you read some of the memoirs or some of the accounts from Stalingrad, there's quite a bit of that. Why being shot with an empty stomach? They were unfortunately empty because they didn't have any food. But the advice hasn't changed since the Second World War. It's very interesting. 54. Sign garbage in position to shelling. The enemy chooses to strike the weakest link in our defenses. Artillery strikes are inflicted on it. It is stormed by enemy infantry and gutted by reconnaissance. Calculating the weak link is easy. By the amount of trash, the position determines not only the number of defenders, but also the nature of the organization of the service. Garbage is a direct result of low discipline. The mess in the trenches, lines on the ropes, rubbish in the parapets, the filthiness of the plantings and fields around the position due to the lack of a latrine speaks of the absence of a firm commanding hand and an uncontrollability of the unit, where everyone lives their own lives. And this is the weak link, which will definitely be hit. If you are unlucky with the commander, then the fighters themselves must protect themselves. To do this, you need to ensure that garbage is always covered in the position. In niches, equipped covered with plank covers, if the trenches are located outside the settlement, in a garbage closed from the wind, a building, a basement, if in a city or village, so that the orderlies daily sprinkle the ditches of latrines with earth. This will rid the position of unpleasant odors, decrease microorganisms, birds, rats, and other living creatures, so that each fighter works daily to strengthen the trenches and turn the position into an impregnable fortress. Only in this case, the enemy will not dare to storm it, realizing that he will deal with a strong-spirited garrison. That is actually very interesting advice, because 2 years ago when I was in Ukraine and I was in Kiev, after the fighting had ended there, we were visiting the Russian trenches. They had dug in the city parks and around the city, and they were absolutely filthy. And they crapped in the trenches where they stood. There was trash everywhere. It was a complete mess. And you would then think the soldiers that went for Kiev in 22 were some of the better Russian soldiers, better Russian units. But there's trash everywhere. And from everyone I hear, um, I talked to in the brigade or was fighting in Ukraine, they all mentioned the same thing: how trashy and messy the Russians are. No matter whether if they ever take a Russian position, there's trash and crap and stuff everywhere. It is the one thing that I'm told by everybody is really interesting that they bring this up, because that seems to be almost the norm. I understand why they put that in there. Right. Okay. 55. I don't know what this is supposed to say, so I'm just going to skip the headline because I actually don't know what it means. Airbait himself? Probably not what it says. Our body is a self-organizing system, and the higher the voltage, the more internal reserves it connects to our protection. Even in the most difficult conditions of trench warfare, in the cold, in clothes that are wet and freezing of the body, the fighters practically do not get sick. Therefore, it makes no sense to keep a warehouse of medications with you, but all kinds of infections entailing suppurator, dysentery, and eczema really causes a lot of problems. Therefore, at every opportunity, you should wash your clothes, wash your feet, hands, groin, armpits, and dry your shoes. What is really useful to a fighter and should always be on hand? Interesting. Hemostatic tourniquet. Head wounds, Individual dressing bags or bandages, 10 centimeters by 5 meters. A set of bacterial adhesive plasters of various sizes, and adhesive plaster in a roll. 2 to 3 rolls of gauze and cotton pads. Of the tablets, lopramide, a remedy for ingestion. 2 tablets at once, plus 1 after each emptying, but no more than 4 per day. There's a risk of getting the opposite effect. Allergy sufferers, antihistamines prescribed by a doctor from the middle of summer until frost in Ukraine. The strongest allergen, the ragweed grass, active blossoms, as well as drugs prescribed by your doctor on a regular basis. Yes, actually, again, personal story, not relevant to this. I'm just going to carry on. But yes, 56. Here the bullets flew by, and yeah, rapid bleeding and pain shock are the cause of death in half of those who die from gunshot wounds. 30% of such wounded die within the first hour after being wounded. These are medical statistics. It can be changed, saving the lives of our fighters, by learning how to properly provide first aid to the wounded. Training in this matter is useless. You will not become a military field surgeon anyway. Therefore, in an extreme situation, when injured, 2 requirements must be met. The first, if a wounded person is bleeding in front of you, we inject promedol. Okay, you know what? Somebody, when we get to the end of this, figure out what this is. I'm curious, and that's what you guys are for. You think I'm going to be doing all the work? Promedol. To do this, with a strong movement at a right angle, insert the tube needles for this entire length into the soft tissue of the buttock, tight or shoulder. Squeeze out the entire content of the syringe and remove the needle. Second, the wounded limbs are pulled with a tourniquet with all force to the maximum until the bleeding stops. And after that, we bandage the wound, indicating on the tourniquet the time of its application. You cannot keep the tourniquet for more than 2 hours. If it's necessary to weaken and drag above the first place of imposition, for a wounded person in the chest or abdomen, after an injection of promedol, we plug the wound with a bandage, cotton wool, cloth, IPP, wrapper, and bandage it tightly. We transfer all wounded as soon as possible to the physicians. Oh, actually, I think they're gonna, any medical training is not gonna be a doctor anyway. Well, gee, thanks. Promedol is an anesthetic used for wounds and injuries. A narcotic allergenic. The action of promedol occurs within 10 to 20 minutes and continues after a single dose for 3 to 4 hours. It makes no sense to inject more than one tube of Promedol when injured. The pain-relieving effect is not enhanced, but the wounded may die. The drug depresses the respiratory center. Tablets and Promedol solutions are prescribed for pain syndromes of moderate to severe severity, resistance to non-narcotic allergenics, including the following cases. Brett Johnson, thank you, brother. I wonder if there's any narcotic in it. I'm just going to continue on Brett's report here. After the injection of Promedol in a conspicuous place of the wounded, on the form, on the face, chest, write the time of injection. If you are injured in the head, you cannot inject Promedol. You're shot in the head, you probably have bigger problems. Okay, I'm curious if there's morphine in there, if there's the same thing as we just give people morphine. Don't we still do that? All right. 58. Being captured is bad. Very bad idea. They are captured for various reasons. The wounded, unconscious, left without ammunition and comrades, but most often out of stupidity. He got lost, went to the village for cigarettes, fell asleep on the post, sometimes voluntarily surrendered. But this is a matter of the psychiatry. The one who considers captivity as a way to save his life is mistaken. Being captured is a very bad idea. During the Great Patriotic War, 63.4% of all Soviet prisoners of war died of starvation, disease, and torture. More than half the prisoners died in Afghan captivity. Ukrainian warriors also arrange hell for our military prisoners of war. Behind bestial cruelty towards our captives hide the awareness of inferiorities and the enemy's fear of the Russians. And for them, we are all Chechens, Tatars, Burats, Uzbekistanis, Udmuks, Russians. To humiliate a defensive prisoner, to torture, castrate, kill, for our enemy is a kind of act of self-affirmation, and for us an unacceptable practice. We do not torture prisoners, save the life of the surrendered to the enemy, a charitable and legally correct deed. We're just going to segue here for a minute. Ukraine have quite a number of female soldiers that are fighting on the front line. Quite a few of them have been captured by the Russians. I don't need to continue this, do I? You know where this is going. And my buddy's a French medic out there, and he had to try to salvage some of what's left of some of them. You started this crap. This is a nice gesture to your soldiers. Maybe you should read this to them a little more often. But anyway, this is me being a little pissy because of some of the things I saw out there. So I have a very specific reason why I don't like women in the front line. But that is just me, and this is not about me. This is about you. This is about sometimes you write things in the manual that does not always happen get adhered to on the actual front line. But could you stop raping and killing women, please? Anyway, moving on. 59. There are no hopeless situations. Anything happens in a war. You can meet an enemy that is superior in strength, get surrounded, be left without ammunition. The main thing in such a situation is to not panic. If you don't know what to do, drink some water. This will take the pressure off. Choose a safe hiding place and lie down. For this, a forest, planting, industrial zone is best suited. Through them, then it is best to break out of the environment. Try to wait until dusk. Firstly, against a nickname in the twilight, a break in the twilight, it is difficult to figure out where your friend is, where someone else is. Secondly, an open sight on a machine gun is no longer efficient, dusk or twilight. A night sight is not yet used so as not to illuminate the matrix. Thermal imaging sights are still rare, which means that shooting at you will not be as effective as during the day. Often twilight is accompanied by fog. This too will help you stay undetected. If found, Change cover as soon as possible. It is difficult to hit a running person, even at a short distance. If the enemy is pursuing and you have no strength left to break away, organize an ambush on him. Let go and shoot point blank. Burdened with the wounded and dead, the pursuers will lose all interest in you. Going out to your own is better. Going out to your own is better during the day. Less risk of falling under friendly fire. Until then, even if you meet our fighters, stay in cover, making sure that you see your own, attract their attention, make it clear that you are not an enemy. Only then do you come out of hiding. Do not give up. Never. Honestly, that is a war where nobody really does want to get caught. And it is sorry that I inserted my own opinion there before, because not all Russian soldiers are bad people, and not all Russian Ukrainian soldiers are good people. And on this front line, it is tradition that bad things happen, and is at this point pretty much committed by everybody. But there are certain war crimes and crimes against humanity that is specifically committed by the people of certain nations that has done this for several many wars, and it still infuriates me. But that's just me inserting my opinion, and I apologize for that. 60. Do not drink alcohol. You'll become a blind man. Nothing, perhaps, did the army more harm than the legend about the benefits of the People's Commissar's 100 gram. A drunk person will either get hurt or killed. That's no question. Drunken noise will attract the attention of the enemy, and he will throw mines into the trenches or send rockets at you. For the sniper, a drunken fighter is an easy target. A drunk without understanding can open fire on his own. Also, stupid orders, hazing. All this is alcohol. If you can't stop your colleagues from drinking, leave. It doesn't end well. The only thing vodka is good for in war is for rubbing the body when there's no way to bathe, and for softening the skin in boots. The ankle boots are abundantly moistured from the inside with vodka and worn on the leg until the very drying. For many years I wore the leather boots, and obviously when I'm out in the mountains, I actually have Russian leather boots, and they're very comfortable. I never thought of dousing them with vodka, but it is interesting in a place where vodka is such an important thing that they list it down here to not get drunk in a war zone. 61. Looting. Bakshias in Eastern language literally means a gift. More broadly, a trophy, money, jewelry, all kinds of gadgets, cars, everything that was of value in civilian life is worth absolutely nothing in war. The main value in war is life, and in order to preserve it, one must give up all other thoughts of material things and live in war. It's been noticed that as soon as a fighter begins to roam behind through abandoned houses, consider that he signed his own sentence. War does not tolerate marauders and cleans them up first. Be sure that the Bashniks, one who seeks out Bashniks, sorry, my Russian is hard, will collect all the mines in the area, come under friendly fire from the Greys, illuminate your positions, expose themselves, and you under enemy fire. But the most vile thing, a Bakshnish, I know, thank you, Lexi. I'm sorry, I have Russian friends and they have failed to teach me Russian. I have Ukrainian friends that have failed to teach me Ukrainian, but I think Ukrainian language is probably harder. I'll start again. But the most vile things that Bashniks can do, it changes people. Cheerful Chaka, they turn their hero into coward, and a miser who lives only for the sake of his trophy. Such a fighter becomes a burden and is of no use. Around him conflicts and quarrel. You must stay away from him. According to the law of karma, it is in his trench that the largest shell will fly, the most accurate bullet, and the most corrosive investigator will come. No one has canceled the criminal offense for looting. Damn it, I wish I could actually post the Russian text on this. No one has canceled the criminal offense for looting. Not entirely sure what that means. Pavel, spasiba. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Did I start this? I started that. Thank you so much. Lose my voice here. I'm. It is an interesting bit of advice. Don't steal stuff for a number of reasons, and it's very good advice. And I think some of these, everything, it is very commonsensical advice that they give, and it's very appropriate. Some of it very appropriate for all armies, but it's very appropriate for here. I hope there'll be a little bit more about specific, the new drones and so on and so forth, but I'm sure they'll do more of them. 62, war will not write off. If someone thinks that one can relax in war without observing the written laws and unwritten customs of war, then he is mistaken. The first months of confusion in the NWO are over. In the New World Order is over. The military, police, and counterintelligence agencies were at full strength. All crimes committed by military personnel will be disclosed without fail. I hope so. Almost 80 years have passed since the Great Patriotic War, and investigators are still looking for and finding war criminals. Today, in the era of information technology and total digital control, it is impossible to hide the facts of murder, violence, and robbery. Russian special services, as practice shows, get all sorts of shaitans, we'll go with that, wherever they hide. This applies to all those who have committed crimes, both the VSC soldiers with the mercenaries and our servicemen, regardless of their ranks and positions. So are you saying, you're still looking for to find out what Russian servicemen raped the 2 million German women in Berlin? Great. I hope you find them anytime soon. Anyway, I had to go there. I'm all about protecting women. It's pretty much the only thing I actually give a damn about any time. 63. Don't pee, brother. In fact, fear is just a reaction of the body to danger. Within reasonable limits, it helps to avoid a lot of trouble. Fear, for example, of an artillery attack makes us dig deeper into the ground. Fear of the sniper prompts you to move in dashes. Fear goes away as we gain combat experience, when we understand that not every bullet is in the forehead, and not every projectile is in your trench. So it turns out that fear in war is a derivative of the lack of information about the enemy and its possibilities. The easiest way to overcome your fear is to be in a team, next to experienced fighters. When there is an opportunity, speak out, friendly. Don't piss, brother. Works better in combat than any tranquilizer. Emotional relaxation also helps a lot. Obscenity towards the enemy, but the first remedy for fear is the offensive actions of our army. When you see with your own eyes the broken enemy equipment, its crossed positions, squirted or captured Ukrainians, miserable, exhausted, and dirty, it comes to understanding that the devil is not really as terrible as he is painted. Well, you're the one that's painting him, so I don't know. But it is still true. That's why the Ukrainian offensive is good for morale for the Ukrainians right now. Different story. If you see this 6 months from now, that's what's going on right now. 64. The most important thing, God with us. God leads us. He is our general, wrote the great Surovov in his book, The Science of Victory. Science, faith in God, the primacy of the spiritual over the material. This is the main secret of the victories of the commander and his miracle God entire. Neither hands nor feet nor the mortal human body wins, but the immortal soul which rules with both hands, feet, and weapons. Without prayers, do not draw weapons. Do not load guns. Do not start anything. Pray to God. Victory comes from him. Surovov teaches us. See in the appendix prayer of the Orthodox warriors before the battle. Alexander Vasilyev firmly knew that there was no death, and death in battle was just a stage for our path to God. The test of war is a kind of purgatory, after which we purify our souls and gain faith, God's providence, and our acceptance, our souls, and leaves them on earth, for only he alone knows the future. There are no atheists in foxholes, I seem to remember would be the appropriate saying. Um, Interesting when your enemy believes the same God as you do. Again, a war that should not have happened. I'll continue. 65. We will go to heaven and they will just die. The fact that Russians and we, its soldiers, are fighting today on the side of God is evidenced by the fact of thousands of Russians of all nationalities, different religions, without coercion. The call of conscience became soldiers in order to fight evil. This happens only once in history, during the Great Patriotic War, where our grandfathers fought against raging fascism. Today, our Orthodox and Muslims, 13 shamanists, is the same formations fighting against Ukrainian nationalism and the world behind them of Satanism. And perhaps our president was not joking when he said that we, as martyrs, will go to heaven and they will simply die. Probably Putin knows something that he simply did not have time to say. Personal comment. Yes, a lot of them, when you say that they signed up in the thousands without coercion, financial coercion is certainly a thing, and the North Koreans and Africans and that are fighting in the Russian army probably came for the money, not specifically for their duty to the fatherland. You seem to have a problem coercing people to join up these days. But anyway, it's better to go to war and believe than to not believe. I will be the first one to say that. Anyway, the last one, 66. If the pamphlet goes to the enemy, oops, let them read. Okay, sorry. Let them read. Sooner or later, Ukrainians will become Russians again, because they have always been Russian, and the more current fighters of the armed forces of Ukraine saved their lives. And the more current fighters of the armed forces of Ukraine save their lives, the fewer tears their loved ones will shed. The special military operations will end, and the current Ukrainian servicemen will once again be shoulder to shoulder with the Russian soldiers who resist the West, which provoked this fratricidal war. The Romanians and the Finns fought together with the Germans for 3 years against the USSR, and then, as soon as the boots of Soviet soldiers set foot on their land, they turned their guns against the Nazis. It's always been so, and so it will be this time. Right, and then there is a prayer, and there's another prayer, then there's a Muslim prayer. Right. This was translated by a combination of a little help from a Russian linguist and Google. Off. Right. Okay. Generally, well-balanced, straightforward advice. I would love to have seen more. What am I blue calls? And I mean, they are a Christian country. They're very God-fearing people. Most of Eastern European countries are very God-fearing. And I've always been the one to say that this is not a war that absolutely should not have happened, because these are people who do have a lot in common. I think it's very optimistic to expect, after what has happened over the past couple of years, that the Ukrainians will ever accept the Russians and trade with them again. What this has done is it has caused an immense hatred for the Russians in Ukraine. Not something that's going to be overcome in a couple of years. This is a real deep-rooted hatred for what the Russians have done. So that's very optimistic. Tino, are indications of the Russian front with clearing out the trenches if there's other international forces fighting on Russian side while being instructed in their own language. Well, the Russians do have a problem, because there's a lot of different nationalities fighting in Russia. So yes, they do have a language problem, because you have Africans there, you have Koreans there, you have different indigenous languages other than Russian spoken, Syrians there. And they do have a problem with what to do with them. They try to keep them together in a sector and give them that sector. It's a problem because you have all these different armies, like the Habsburg army before World War One. You are inundated with nationalities, different nationalities that could not communicate. So that really does that. It's posing a problem today because the Russians speak Russian, and very much not any others. And so yes, that there is a lot of different. Again, the Africans that are there. It's very strange, the African Russian uniform. But of course, they don't speak a word of Russian. So they're trying to teach them the basics, but keep them together under some sort of unified control of a commander there locally and give them specific rare echelon tasks. Well, you know what? Let's look at that. The Russians are a bit annoyed because the Ukrainians openly let the Russians through. It's a historic part of all this. Yes, and you can't really blame them because World War II was on the heels of the great starvation of a quarter of the Ukraine's population by the Russians. The Stalin's policies killed millions. They starved millions of Russians, of Ukrainians to death. The Great Holodomor, to a staggering degree. They would take away all the foodstuffs, even the seed grain from the Ukrainian farmers, so they couldn't plant anything for the following year. And this was policed by young cosmopoles, young communists. And this seed grain was a lot of times sold to the West in exchange for technology. Like you had slaves digging out gold in Russia to sell to the Americans for technology, to around the world for technology. So the Russia, when the Germans came in 41, yeah, the Ukrainian really saw the Germans as liberators because nothing could be as bad as the Russians. And you see videos, I've showed them some of my videos, that there is lots of Ukrainians that were waving flags and cheering the Germans on because anything was better than the Russians. So yes, Ukrainian men fighting on the front line. The women are building drones and sending them. Yeah, but there's also women on the front line. There are even been women snipers, and yeah, I was like, my buddy from the brigade was telling me some of the stories when I was out there, and I no. Edward, the first thing is the Russian thing, all the young Russian boys and the young Ukrainian boys that are being killed. Yes, it is absolutely atrocious that these people are killing each other. This could have been avoided. It absolutely could have been avoided. It should never have happened. But now we are here and we have to deal with it. And we have a Ukraine that will passionately hate the Russians for many, many, many decades. This is not going to be forgiving. Also, my question to one of my buddies in the Ukrainian army, and one of the officers, was, if the Russians had fought an honorable campaign, and I don't give a crap what you say, this is not, like I say, I have Russian friends, I have Ukrainian friends. I'm not going to disown either because there's a war, and because there are some soldiers that are doing horrible things to civilians. Second or third day of the war, there are Russian soldiers raping Ukrainian women. That's not something I want to debate because I met them and it's a fact. And killing civilians, shooting young men in the back of their head after a prisoner. And it's on camera. And this was how the Russians opened up the war. This laid the foundation for what? And I warned everybody, you look at my videos. I warned them, don't let this spiral into the traditional Second World War of hate and hate and hate, because it just becomes a spiral of destruction where prisoners are killed. Prisoners are killed on both sides. I have not heard of any Ukrainian soldiers raping and killing young women and children, but I most certainly have heard those stories from frontline soldiers, rear echelon soldiers, medical personnel, of how they're doing that to anything they occupy. That's how they behave, and that's just like they behaved during the Second World War. And that is a cultural thing that is unforgivable. And that is my big problem, is if we fight to protect women and children, because that is still the most innocent. And yes, I know women can be mean and kill just as well. That I just don't want women in a war zone. I don't want civilians. I don't want children in a war zone. And if they are, it's everybody's responsibility, as an obligation, as being men, as being fighting men, as being a man on the planet. Is our obligation to protect women and children. That is what men do. Damn it. So, yeah, it's interesting that the Ukrainian, they're passing a new recruitment bill that makes men, I think it's over 26 or 27, eligible for military service. And I don't know, why isn't it 21 or 18 like everywhere else? But that's very interesting. That's a very, very interesting that they do that. Adam, Poland, thank you. I have a Polish friend. I miss Poland. I want to go back to Poland. Thank you, Adam. I appreciate it, brother. But I would love to see this to start. I don't see how this is going to end, because the Russians, was very interesting what's happening in Kursk right now. It's very interesting. Like I said, yeah, now we're stuck with it. Now we're stuck with a war that shouldn't have been. And what are we going to do with it? The Ukrainians are generally fighting out of the impression that they're going to fight until Putin dies. And I'm saying, well, if he dies, if we're waiting for him to die of old age, this could be a long time. And that's not really a good strategy. It's really not. Yeah, let's just talk about Kursk for a minute, because it's very interesting what they did there. The Russians knew that there was a Ukrainian buildup. They had something's going on. They knew that, and they didn't really do anything about it. They didn't really plan for it. There's not really anything there. And then the Ukrainians just went, and they're flying helicopters there. They're flying planes there now. That's really interesting. It's very interesting that all of a sudden the Ukrainians just rolled up everything. And my thought is, what I said 2 years ago, when everyone in the West were moaning, telling them, well, we need offensive, we need to see something so we can justify why we keep selling you weapons. I think the Western press and politicians forced the Ukrainians into the assault of 23 that failed, the offensive, because they're banging up against well-defended, well-enforced lines. The Russians knew they were coming, and they weren't breaking. Their second lines were not breaking. And it was just stupid. You've advanced on a broad line. It was stupid. And I was sitting there, and I'm telling them, if you don't have enough men and material that you can do an offensive and lose everybody and still hold the line, then don't do the offensive. Wait until you can. And didn't anybody ever read I Only Have Enemies in Poland? I thought I had friends in Poland. Great. It's that's a strange thing to write. Anyway, and I lost my train of thought there. Didn't anybody read von Clausewitz? Schwerpunkt. You concentrate your strongest forces in a small point, and then you break through. That's what they did at Kursk. And when I saw they trickle through there and then broadened, I thought to myself, oh my God, somebody read them on Clausewitz. This is a Schwerpunkt. They did exactly what you do. You break through. The weakest part of the line if you can, and then you expand and you roll up the lines. That they did exactly what they should sort of have known. They should have known, and I think that's what they wanted to do. And that's what they did. So it's very, and they're still doing it. They're still moving, and they're still. I every day I'm like, you got to slow down. What is the plan? What is the plan? What are they doing? Are they doing this because eventually there's going to be some sort of negotiation, and now they have territory they can bargain from or for? Is that what this is? I don't know. Um, and my friends aren't telling me anything. As this, indeed, they shouldn't. So let's see what will happen. Um, Very interesting. Uh, no, there's plenty of people. Anyway, um, yeah, war is a continuation of state policies, continuation of policy by other means, and that is, yep, yeah, I'm good. Thanks, machine. I appreciate it, brother. We should jump on yours and talk about that other thing one of these days if I actually ever have a day off. All right. Final words or statements or death threats or whatever else you're going to come up with. This will be the time. And I will post the whole Russian read on my website and others, so you can pick through it. But it's just interesting infantry advice that you can listen to driving to work and driving to fall asleep. So there. Anyway, what are we doing? We're doing something on Saturday, I guess. Incorruptus, you were about to say something. I'm sensing there's something being written there. Yeah, no worries. I hear you. I think we're going to do some tunnels on Saturday. Yeah, it's very. When we're see how this turns out, I guess I'm going to have to go to Kursk, and then I'll do a Kursk 43 2024 video. The difference of all the. It's not really. There's not really any single similarities, so I guess we'll be okay. All right, you guys. I hope this was not too boring. And thank you guys for listening. Thank you guys for supporting. And Pavel, what the hell? Hang on. Where did you go, Pavel? Thank you. I just want to say thank you. I saw a donation that I missed. Anyway, I'm sorry. I'm not looking on YouTube, so I can't find everything I'm seeing. I'm talking on this thing. Thank you, everybody. Like I said, hope it wasn't too boring. I mean, there's a lot of. Well, it wasn't the Russian. That's what we were told at the beginning of the Kursk offensive, that it was the Russian Ukrainian brigade. There's Russians fighting for Ukraine as well. There's a lot of different nationalities fighting for. There's a lot of different people fighting for Ukraine, but that's a whole different story. And no, it's not going to be a tank battle like Kursk. That's what I was thinking. But yes, we were initially told that this was the Russian soldiers that was fighting for Ukraine, and then later it sort of came out that it actually wasn't. Some of the people there are the ones that was set on that had been stationed on the Belarus side, and were up against opposite the Belarusian force that had been built up on the border. That did not materialize. They did a deal. The Ukrainians had massed forces there because the Belarusians had massed forces there, and then they all went home, but the Ukrainians didn't go home. They sort of snuck down here and assembled and did this. And what I'm really impressed with is the secrecy and the fact that they have enough air superiority in Kursk right now that they can fly helicopters and fixed-wing aircraft, which it's very something that they haven't really done. This is more and more of a serious assault. I just hope they have enough logistics to back this up and push through. At the very least, if they can get to hold ground here, that could lead to something on a negotiating table. This is going to. No, there was a little bit of drone advice in this, and it's interesting because one of the reasons why I was very much wanted this particular report was because of the drone situation there. You have drones being for everything at this point, including the little miniature drones. That's also going to be a thing in the future. Um, and I thought they would give the Russian soldiers more warning, except hide, and if you can see it, shoot at it with your squad weapons. I had thought they would give this something more specific. But I'll tell you, the Ukrainians are carrying shotguns now for what you can see, which is another thing. There's also drones now that are running they have little spools of wire, and again, that's now you have a little bit like the tow missile. That you have 2,000-3,000 yards of spool. So, yeah. So yeah, they're actually, that was my first thought when I was out there a couple of years ago. Was, are you using shotguns to take down? I mean, I think the DJI drones is a real thing out there. You can theoretically do that with a shotgun, not sawed off shotgun. Definitely, you need a little bit of range on this one. But buckshot, yeah, birdshot, yeah. Except when they come fast. And if you see the aftermath of somebody hit with a suicide drone with 400 or 500 grams of explosives, it's messy. It's not pretty, and it's scary like hell. That you're looking at a warfare in the future where you have munitions chasing you. Your munitions chasing you in under the nest, into the trenches, into your dugouts. That's not fucking funny anymore. That's messy. That's terrifying. We were always talking about smart weapons, smart munitions. We've been, U.S. military have been training and playing around with that for a long time. Smart munitions, that's a little bit of Blade Runner going on there. But we'll talk more about, I want to dig up something more on the drones. Also, I wanted to last week talk about the drones and the Trump assassination, where you're looking at, here's a would-be assassin who has a drone and explosives in his car, remote detonator, and you can buy you could have married those two. You don't even have to. You do a suicide drone. The little hand release, the little release, you can buy that on YouTube, and you can print out. And on the internet, you can find pretty much anything you need in order to make an improvised explosive, if you so desire. I mean, I haven't looked. I'm not encouraging you to look. I'm just expecting you can pretty much find anything online, and you can marry that to a drone. And is the Secret Service thinking about this? Is the military talking about this? Because I haven't heard that conversation about what are we actually doing as counter drone warfare. And now if we do electronic warfare and jamming, well, that's great. However, when you have wire-guided drones now, like the tow missile, where you have little spools of fiber optics or guide cable for 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 yards out of the drone, then it can't be jammed. Or you have search and destroy independent drones that operate without needing signal control, where you pre-program, you're looking for something that looks like this, or you target it from a distance at this and then fly away. It doesn't matter if you jam it for guidance, if it can intelligently find and lock it on its own target. We're looking at a very interesting time, but we can go on more on that. But yeah, they're wired. Some of them are wired too. There's a lot of okay, we'll talk about that later. What Olga says, no need to. Oh, great. That's nice. All the haters are here today. So anyway, you guys have a nice day. Because I'm tired, and it's time to get ready to go to work tomorrow. If anybody have any strange questions on my service, I have a video on my channel where I outline exactly what I did and what I am doing. So, since somebody seems bent on trashing that today, you guys take care, have a nice day, and have fun.